Good morning and welcome back to Harlequin's Book Coven, where I, your host, Prince Harlequin, read a book and then I tell you how I felt about it. If you watched last week's video, you will know what this week's video is going to be. You can also know what this week's video is going to be about by the title because I put it in there. However, last week we read Phantasma by Kaylee Smith, which is the first book in a series called Wicked Games, which currently only has two books, but there is a third on the way in September. And now that I've read the second book, which is Enchantra, which is what we'll be talking about, did I actually get water on this? I think I did. I think so. In a previous take, I took a sip of water and it splashed, and I was like, oh, but it didn't get on the book. All's well that ends well. I was wrong, but it's okay. It wasn't much, and it's fine. So, anyway, Enchantra is the second book in this series, and I started it the day after I read Phantasma, which I also think kind of contributes to how I ended up feeling about this book as a whole, or at least the journey through this book. This one is not. This book is not the home run journey that I had with Phantasma. However, I'm going to get into why, and I want to preface everything that I'm going to say about this book with I absolutely loved this book. I need to talk about the journey. But before I do, let's read the book flap and what it is about. Welcome to Enchantra. There's only one rule. Never ever trust your heart. So we're back in that bag. When Genevieve Grimm's mother dies, she's left with questions no one can answer until she receives an invitation to Enchantra, a cursed place in Italy, frozen in time. Only the sinfully handsome and hostile Rowan Silver refuses to let her inside. So, Genevieve finds her own way in and soon realizes her mistake. For Enchantra is a twisted labyrinth carved from gleaming silver and thorned hedges, where Rowan and his 6 siblings are trapped in a deadly game, so we're back in a game bag, at the mercy of a devil and his ghastly spectators. Only one occupant of the house can survive. Genevieve now must win or die. Rowan warns her he's the deadliest of the Silvers, that he always wins, that her only chance is to compete as his wife. So they must convince their audience they're desperately in love. And while Genevieve's willing to do whatever it takes to survive, she knows she can't trust Rowan, that the desire burning between them is a lie. After all, it was Rowan who taught her Enchantra's first rule: never ever trust your heart. So, after getting done with Phantasma, and this is where we are going to get into why I wanted to preface this with I actually really love this book, because there's going to be tons of things that I'm going to, for for lack of a better term, complain about. That is a personal complaint, not a critical one. So I want to be super clear on that there is going to be some ranting, there's going to be some things I felt, but overall, I actually really loved this book. Now that we've gotten that out of the way for a second time, let's get into Enchantra. So, after finishing Phantasma, my obsession with Blackwell knew no bounds, and I immediately needed the second book, and so I bought it, and it got delivered overnight in the morning when I got up. And I waited all day at work to be able to read it again. I did not read the book flap. I did not read what it was about. I wanted to be surprised. And I was surprised to find out that we were not following Ophelia and Blackwell. In fact, this time we were following Genevieve as she once again goes off and gets herself in some ridiculous fucking trouble that her sister will inevitably have to save her from. And let's just start with the fact that we switched over to Genevieve's POV. I remember in my Phantasma video, I hope it was in that take, that I mentioned how I didn't understand why Genevieve wasn't the main character of the first one because she was instantly more likable. Now that she is the main character in a book, I wanted to go back to Ophelia. This is a fun fact about me. I'm clearly never fucking happy. Nothing is ever good enough. I get what I want, and then I want what I didn't want before, and then if I get that, I want what I had to begin with. It's just how I work, okay? And I recognize this, and I'm conscious of this. So we are working through it. Anyway, Genevieve gets to Enchantra and runs into Rowan, and immediately there's like a little bit of a spark between them. It's not quite as palpable as Ophelia in Blackwell's spark in chemistry. In fact, I think that was something that I actually had a really hard time with reading through this, is that while there is undeniably a little bit of chemistry because each of them is trying to keep up this ruse of a marriage, personally, they are trying to distance themselves from each other to not catch feelings in the process. And this is when I discovered I don't like fake dating trope. I don't like it. It's not my thing. Mostly because what typically ends up happening, and what does end up happening, is you have somebody that is able to fake it, and you have somebody that was able to fake it until they caught feelings, and now they're growing resentful, they're feeling hurt, they're not understanding why this person that's handling it so well is able to because they can't. And it's very, very frustrating. And so I think overall the journey for me was a little bit rough because I don't like the fake dating thing, and I don't like the what does unrequited love mean? Because I think that's what I want. We're gonna Google it together. What is unrequited love? Is that, I guess, unrequited? 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 Isn't it unrequited? It doesn't matter. We're gonna find out together. A one sided, non reciprocated romantic feeling where one person experiences deep affection for another who does not return those feelings to the same degree. That's exactly what I want. Or that's the term I want. I don't want that in my book. Um, the unrequited love, I can't deal with. It drives me nuts. It breaks my heart. It's just very hard to get through. And so for that portion of the book, which these books obviously are, the romance is centered within like a deadly game. So there's two sides to it. The romance side of it was very hard for me to deal with throughout this book. The game itself is very much like Ready or Not. Um the movie Ready or Not. And so that was exciting. That I did like each round of it. I liked that there were different variations of how it started so that it kept it fresh, it kept it fun. It got more and more dangerous as the book went on and more hard to survive. All of that done super well. The Enchantra itself, the mansion, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I loved this setting. I absolutely adored it. Rooms with magical places behind the doors that have secrets in them that you have to find, but then if you find the secret, they become more dangerous. It so good. So good. Um so what I liked about this book, I did by the end really love the love story. I know I just spent 5 minutes, it felt like, completely complaining about the structure of it. When you get to the ending, I have never been so close to crying. Like I've never been this moved from a book before. So regardless if I don't like the fake dating trope, regardless if the journey of the love story wasn't something that I enjoyed as much as I enjoyed Phantasmas with Blackwell, as much as I struggled to remind myself that this is a new character, Rowan is a new character, I have to set aside Blackwell so that I can be open to who Rowan is and his what's the word? his allure, I guess, it was very difficult for me. So for that, I don't feel like I gave the book the fairest of chances. And I think that is largely to do with the fact that I read them back to back. And I think had I had to wait for the second book, like most other people did, I think I actually would have ended up liking this even better because I think it's much better written. I think there is much more depth in this book. The emotional stakes are higher, the games stakes are higher. The devil in this one is absolutely, I know it feels like a redundant thing to say, but so evil. He's just such an asshole. I fucking hate him. You get to go to hell in this book, which actually was really fucking cool. It was one of my favorite sequences in the book. Was this what is it called? Excursion to hell that happens, and you get to see where the Silvers as a family reside, at least the losers of the game every year reside for the next 364 days until they have the game again and see if one of them can win and then not have to go back to hell for a year. The conclusion of this one, and this is why I wanted to preface this entire video stating, I want you to know that I love this book. As where in Phantasma, I complained it was too quick, that the resolution was done a little bit too rushed. So I don't, the thing that bothers me about that is this is a 500-page book. You could have added 40 more pages. Well, an almost 500-page book. You could have added 40 more pages just to make the resolution feel a little bit more practical. Enchantra, this thing right here, the ending was perfect. The ending was absolutely gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was moving. It was exciting. I mean, obviously, it's a climax of a death game, but even after that, this is how you write an ending because it wrapped up the story perfectly in a believable way, in a practical way, in a way that didn't feel like there was plot armor or anything of the sort. There were really high stakes. There was a lot of emotions. And then you also get everybody that read this incredibly excited for the next book. I cannot wait for September. I absolutely cannot wait for September. I think the next book's hopefully it's just as good, if not better. Kaylee is getting amazing at her writing. She already started off absolutely phenomenal in Phantasma. This is already, as I said, an honorary 5-star book, even though critically I think it's a 4.75. A personal rating would be 5. But Enchantra, if I set aside my personal feelings, if I set aside how I felt about the journey, which was very entertaining, and I acknowledge that everything that I struggled with in this is a personal gripe and not necessarily a critical gripe, and I can give Phantasma a personal rating of 5 stars, even though critically it's probably a 4.75. Following that logic, Enchantra is a 5-star book, critically. From a critical standpoint, 5 stars. Even with all of my critiques, on a personal level, on a personal rating, 4.75 stars. It's almost there for me. It's the fake dating. I don't do well at it. This also has some spice in it. Not as much as Phantasma. So if that was something that you felt was like overdone in Phantasma or showed up too much, this didn't. It does have it, and it definitely has some pretty explicit scenes, but it's not like 5 or 6 of them. It's maybe like 3 or 4, if that, 2 or 3. Like it's very low. The spice is not the focus of this book. The story is the focus of this book, and the ending makes that make sense because they have so many people to introduce that we may see later. So, for that reason, I do think that Enchantra is a 5-star book. I think it is very entertaining. I think it's hot. I think Genevieve, much like Ophelia, for the first part of the book, I didn't love her as much as I did in Phantasma, but she did grow on me towards the end. And I'm going to get into that for a minute. I want to talk about that before I end this video. The reason Genevieve got on my nerves for the first half of this book is because in Phantasma, we know all the stress that Ophelia was under, having to take on the family's magic and having to train from a young age and having this burden to bear from a very young age, and how that affected her and how hard it was for her. And Genevieve, if I remember correctly, and I feel like I did and do, was aware that Ophelia had a very rough time with that. And then in Enchantra, she acts like Ophelia just had the best time ever being the person to inherit the magic, and that she is the forgotten sibling. And it's just like, did we? So not only do you keep creating things that your sister's going to inevitably have to clean up, and you keep being a pain in the ass, now you want sympathy because you got to live your life. Like, granted, valid, completely valid if your mom didn't give you a ton of attention because she was just focused on Ophelia. You have a right to be upset about that. That's an understanding thing. That's a very human reaction to that scenario. But to have resentment for your sister is insane to me when you know what she went through. And you also know that she had to follow you to Phantasma to make sure that you were okay. And she has all of this burden to bear of the family's man. Like, it's very much like I mentioned in the Phantasma video, where does it make sense? In this case, kind of. I'm not going to say yes, but kind of. I can understand. Just because it makes sense doesn't mean that it was fun to read about. And so that was kind of what like messed up the journey for me as well. Is I was just really getting frustrated with Genevieve and her thought process and her perspective on her growing up and Ophelia's growing up and their mom. I feel like we answered some of those things in Phantasma, and the fact that she was still feeling this way just blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. But that's fine. We're moving forward. I love Genevieve now. I did like the love story by the end. I did like how moving this book was. I did like how this book feels like a grand scale kind of book. Even though it's shorter than Phantasma, it feels like there was so much more substance within Enchantra. And for that, I do think it's a 5-star book. So I'm going to stick with that. If you've read Enchantra or you've read Phantasma, one of these masterpieces, what did you think? Which one's your favorites? What were the things you liked or disliked about, not this one, Enchantra, this one? And like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube things, and we will return in the next one, where I am reading a very questionable book that I don't even know if I'll do a review for. So I may just finish Riley Sager's House Across the Lake, because I don't think I can talk about the one I'm reading. Anyway, I will talk to you guys later. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.